Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the AM Report for HAPS News, the network of now. I'm Alex Mahajer, and this morning I'll be joined by Miranda Yaver, friend of the program, constitutional expert, political scientist, and postdoctoral scholar at UCLA. She'll be here to discuss really just the news and what's been going on lately. We talked before the broadcast, and we said we might shoot the shit for you guys on air a little bit and see what's going on out in the news. We're going to be talking about the holdup of this coronavirus vaccine. We're going to be talking about Governor Brian Kemp and his supposed claiming that he's getting death threats against him ahead of these January 5th runoff elections, and all of today's top headlines this morning on the AM Report. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the program. I'm Alex Mahajer. If you're watching on the HAPS app, website, or platform, click the award button. Let us know you're enjoying it. Or if you're watching on Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, YouTube, Periscope, or wherever this show is found, leave a comment and we'll try to bat around with you live on air. We've got a lot of headlines to cover this morning, so let's just jump right into it before we and welcome Miranda to the program. The FDA has announced it is rapidly seeking to issue an emergency use authorization of the Moderna vaccine. This is the second of the two approved vaccines after it voted yesterday to recommend it. And this is happening as the average death toll and new case rates are hitting records. And on Wednesday, more people died from COVID-19 than died in 9/11. So we're hitting really some grim records there. Everybody wear a mask. What's the haps for today? Pfizer is taking the Trump administration to task for its, quote, baffling rollout of the Pfizer vaccine as millions of doses are bottlenecked in warehouses awaiting shipment instructions from the White House. Meanwhile, states have been told that their expected shipments have been mysteriously cut in half. So is it any surprise that the Trump administration, who failed to order the appropriate number of doses when they had the opportunity over the summer, is now totally bungling the rollout? They're awaiting word to receive shipment instructions, and people are really ready for this vaccine, myself included. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp is claiming that pro-Trump conspiracy theorists have threatened his family as the January 5th Senate runoff election nears in the wake of Trump's loss in that state. And yesterday we talked about the Republican Civil War and how there seems to be a splintering in the Republican Party of Trump loyalists and then Trump establishment figures who are ready to acknowledge Joe Biden's victory and move forward. And will there be a splintering in this Senate runoff election? We're not sure yet, but we do know that there have been threats to boycott that election by Trump MAGA loyalists, which might significantly harm Republicans' chances of maintaining that chamber of Congress. But we will see. Right now, the Republicans in those states, Republicans in that state are polling slightly ahead of their Democratic challengers. So we will see what happens. Stay tuned to this space. Right now, I'd like to welcome Miranda Yaver to the program. Good morning, Miranda.
Good morning, Alex. How are you doing?
Oh, existential dread, social distancing.
Sounds about right. 2020.
We're both in California, and we're getting some grim news about COVID here specifically, that they're
in Los Angeles.
Yeah, especially in Los Angeles, the new case rate is extremely high. We're being considered the new epicenter, and that our ICU bed capacity has reached 0.
Yeah.
So if you are hit by a car or have a brain aneurysm or a heart attack, you can't go to the ER without worrying that you won't be able to get seen by intensive care specialists. So just a grim time, but happy Friday, Miranda.
Happy Friday. The weekend is near.
Miranda, a lot of people chiming in this morning. Angel says hello from Green Bay. Bronte is saying hello from Cleveland. Daniel Goff, loyal viewers, saying that if you subscribe to me, you can get notified for the AM report every morning. Do as Daniel Goff does, everybody. Subscribe to this program. You can do that at haps.tv/@Alex. I want to thank Mark Goldman for the Super Heart Award, because it's not just enough to get a heart from you, Mark. I need a super heart. and I need it now. Okay. And thank you for the high award. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see you this morning. So, Miranda, the big real news right now as we go into this Friday is that Congress is nearing its deadline to pass a new stimulus bill. And as our Congress is wont to do, there's a holdup with it's touch and go. We're not sure whether a deal is going to be passed. It's sort of problematic right now. Congressional negotiators are working on an almost $1 trillion COVID-19 economic relief package that has been struggling to get ahead. Can you talk to me a little bit about the need for this new relief package and just Congress's failure in general to respond to the coronavirus pandemic all year?
Yeah, I mean, individuals, small businesses need help. People have lost their jobs. People have been on unemployment. People have had cuts to their work. Maybe they're not out of work, but they're underemployed. Businesses are struggling to stay afloat, such as restaurants, for example. Obviously, since we can't eat in restaurants right now, at least in many parts of the country. And the idea that the government is just sort of fussing over so many sort of minutia when there's so much at stake is really infuriating. And so there are very high stakes to this. We've only had one stimulus check over the course of the entire pandemic. It was $1,200 back in April, I believe it was, and that's just fundamentally not enough.
Yeah, it's shameful, Miranda. And reading the details of the proposed package that may be coming forth, the central elements are as follows: more than $300 billion in aid to businesses, a $300 per week bonus federal jobless benefit, and renewal of soon to expire state benefits, and then $600 direct payments to individuals, which is a significant decrease from the $1,200 check that people up to $1,200 check that people received in the stimulus package earlier this year. Vaccine distribution funds and money for renters, schools, the Postal Service, and people needing food aid, which is, of course, welcome, but eerily silent any word about student loan relief and some other really important elements like state and local governments receiving relief. The Republicans continue to call aid for state and local governments as a handout to blue states, which is preposterous. What are your thoughts on that and where this is falling short?
Well, first of all, blue states subsidize red states at a much higher level, so it's important to keep in mind that. Also, these are not certainly haven't had the Republicans haven't had any hesitation about giving massive handouts to big corporations. But when you're talking about people who are struggling, whether because they're unemployed or because they're underemployed or because their businesses are struggling, I don't think it's helpful to think of it as in terms of red state, blue state. These are human beings. These are small businesses in a really egregious public health and economic crisis that we just haven't seen. And these aren't handouts; these are a help up. This is really about helping people stay afloat in really dire conditions that are out of their control. This is not because people are lazy, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't help people because because of other factors unrelated to the pandemic. But this is not because of laziness. This is not because they're sitting around and want to be unemployed. It's that this is a dual public health and economic crisis, and the idea that we shouldn't be helping blue states or versus red states is just preposterous. One thing that I think flew under the radar in the news yesterday, because there's just been so much news, was that the Trump administration is cutting $200 million in federal support for healthcare to California because California requires that private insurance plans cover abortion. And the idea that the quote unquote pro-life party would cut $200 million from healthcare in the middle of a deadly pandemic is just nonsense. I mean, it's galling. It's a lot of four-letter words that I don't want to introduce to your program.
Introduce them. They need to know, Miranda. Yeah, it's, and the other thing, state and local governments receiving bailout. It's not a bailout, as you said. These are people who are employees who are it's the livelihoods of people who have, through no fault of their own, been adversely affected by the reduced property tax incomes for counties, which fund our basic services, including COVID-19 services that governments have, local and state governments have become the essential frontline workers on. So it's not just in blue states, it's in states. It's states, not blue states. It's states, cities, and counties, not blue states, cities, and counties.
And it's worth
Reddit.
And it's worth
Yeah.
reminding people that, a survey showed that this was well before the pandemic, that most people couldn't afford an unexpected $500 bill, a medical bill, dental bill, what have you. And so that really hammers home the financial insecurity of many people across this nation. And when you add into the mix the pandemic, that really should highlight the need for this kind of relief.
Absolutely. And we have a commenter here who says school relief is never going to happen. I think a lot of student borrowers, because this is already, even before the pandemic, it was a crisis in this country, because we have $1 trillion student loan debt where most of the borrowers default because they can't afford exorbitant payments, and the lenders are engaged in predatory lending practices. Even the government-owned loans, where the federal government purchased up a bunch of student loans around the Obama administration, even those loans are charging exorbitant interest rates where people can't pay because they pay. I'm speaking full disclosure. I'm one of them. They charge you like a 9% interest rate on a student loan. I'll know people are getting mortgages right now for 2.235%, low 2%, but a student borrower is paying 8.5 or 9%, and the federal government doesn't let you refinance them, doesn't let you restructure those loans. And that's just the federal government, let alone what's happening in the private sector. And so what happened earlier this year, which was the pause on payments and no interest accrued, I think even that would be welcome for people, but it's not being addressed in the new package. Right now, student loan payments are set to resume at the end of January, and really, Congress would be wise to extend that through the life of this pandemic till every last person is vaccinated. So
I saw that Daniel Goff made a comment about the challenges of food insecurity, and that's another thing that I think we really need to address right now through greater aid, helping people get on food stamps, helping people to have access to healthy food. One thing that I'm doing for Christmas this year, because I think a lot of, at least my mom and I were talking about, like, we don't need more things in our apartment for the holidays, is I'm going to be donating to local food banks in the honor of people in my family, because right now, 1 in 5 people in Los Angeles, for example, is food insecure. And I'm sure, and that was a statistic that preceded the pandemic, and I'm sure that it's gone up.
Yeah, commenter Bronte says, when families are food insecure, the family pets will suffer immeasurably. Cats and dogs are suffering too. Thanks for that. But that's true. Yeah, I mean, yes, save the dogs and cats. Mike Grizz says, need cash money ASAP, and is asking Miranda, do you think that this package ultimately gets passed?
I hope so. I think that right now, they're sort of pissing and moaning over particular provisions that some, Republicans don't want or some Democrats want. I think that the urgency of this will mean that something gets passed, I don't think it's going to be as nearly as much as what people need. But I think that something will get passed, whether it delivers the amount of the needed relief is a much bigger question.
Absolutely. And on a final note, Miranda, Joe Biden, President-elect Joe Biden, he was formally certified this week by the Electoral College, and now Republicans are starting to get in line. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, of course, acknowledging Joe Biden's victory later in time than Russian President Vladimir Putin, which is just a cherry on top of a year, Mitch McConnell. So Joe Biden's incoming, and he's promising to have 100 million vaccines to 100 million people in the first 100 days, and he's picking some of his cabinet picks. And I wanted to just ask your opinion on some of these really historic, diverse cabinet picks. We just learned that Deb Haaland will become the first Native American to be nominated to the presidential cabinet in the Department of the Interior, Congresswoman Marcia Fudge of Ohio for housing and urban development, and former Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm, the Department of Energy. She will be a very progressive voice on climate change. All in all, a pretty diverse cabinet. What are your thoughts on the cabinet selections early on as we wait for really the big ones at education, justice, labor, and the CIA?
I am very excited. I think one thing that, certainly comes to mind is the diversity of this cabinet. We're going to have the first Black man to be heading the Environmental Protection Agency. We're going to have the first Native American to be heading the Department of Interior. We're going to have the first LGBT cabinet member in the Department of Transportation. I first was thinking, well, transportation is sort of a weird choice for Buttigieg. It sort of felt like, well, let's put him somewhere. But transportation is an agency that could really use someone who's ambitious, and he certainly has his eyes set on continuing in politics, so maybe that'll be a good place for him. So, Joe Biden promised that he would have a diverse and progressive cabinet, and I think he's really delivering. Environmental Protection Agency is one that I've had, my Environmental Protection Agency and Health and Human Services are the two agencies that I've really had my eye on. I'm thrilled to pieces about Javier Becerra's nomination. Because he's really been, he argued in defense of the Affordable Care Act at the Supreme Court in just a couple months, last month, feels like it was ages ago. And to have the top environmental person in North Carolina who's really taken on the coal companies, being an EPA, is just going to be such a tremendous amount of progress that I think that we can see in contrast with the Trump administration. The question, of course, is whether the Senate Republicans, if the runoffs don't go well, if the Senate Republicans are going to let these people be confirmed. I'm expecting that Doug Jones is going to be Department of Justice and the Attorney General, and I think that having a civil rights lawyer is just going to be a wonderful selection. I'll be absolutely livid if it's Merrick Garland, because I don't want to give away a DC Circuit Court of Appeals position, although I think that they would both make fine attorneys general.
All of the people being floated for justice, for attorney general, are picks in poetry. Like, if it is Merrick Garland, after what happened to his Supreme Court confirmation with Mitch McConnell, it's poetry to me if he gets a position like attorney general. And I know, logically speaking, he should stay where he's at, but I think it would be poetry if it's Sally Yates, who was sort of unceremoniously fired by the Trump administration when she was the deputy attorney general at the beginning of his administration. That would be fairly satisfying. She's a person who's sort of involved with the Russia investigation in its early infancy. So that would be sort of satisfying. And Doug Jones, who flipped his Alabama Senate seat during the special election 2017, was a big win for Democrats in a time they were feeling very dejected, and now lost his seat to Tommy Tuberville
And
in Alabama.
the KKK when Donald Trump defended them. So,
so any one of those picks I think would be very welcome, and poetry in motion. So we'll see what happens there. Daniel Goff is saying spot on cabinet picks. I want to thank John Barr for subscribing. I want to thank Adam Cobb for the Buy Me a Coffee award. A lot of people chiming in. Surely there will be a past stimulus agreement, says Dolly, and we will see. It's also a funding bill, so this bill has to pass in order for it to avoid a government shutdown. So our eyes are on this, and as Miranda said, the Georgia Senate election, runoff elections, January 5th, which will determine the power balance of the United States Senate, are now really the most important races in the country, because these confirmation hearings, Joe Biden's agenda, the response to the coronavirus vaccine, the rollout of the coronavirus vaccine, even, like, is it even going to get rolled out under Trump? We don't know. So all in all, they've now become extremely important, and people are turning out in Georgia record numbers. But it appears the Republicans in that state are sort of pulling ahead, Miranda, of the Democratic candidates. Can you help me compute this here? Why are the Republicans ahead in a state where Joe Biden just won?
well, I've seen some polls where the Democrats were slightly ahead. It looks like it's, at the end of the day, it looks like it's all within the margin of error. And Georgia was a very close election. I mean, Joe Biden won, but it was close. And Joe Biden outperformed the Senate candidates. From what I remember, so it does seem like it's within the margin of error. It's very close. Georgia was very close. That all seems to sort of track. And when you have a special election, you're going to have the diehards turning out, essentially. Or not a special election, but an off-cycle, election. You're going to have the diehards, and you're going to have the diehards from both parties, and so it's really just a turnout game. So the Democrats really need to do everything that they can to make sure that every registered Democrat turns out and votes, because the ability for Joe Biden to accomplish the agenda that he was elected to deliver really rests on this.
One hundo, all eyes on Georgia. Record turnout there, though. People are turning out for a runoff election in records. So let's see. Bronte saying record early voting in Georgia runoff. Yep, the turnout's astronomical. I actually went to Fulton County, Georgia, ahead of the November 3rd election to report on some of the early voting snags that people were running into, because it's a state that's very well known for its voter suppression efforts and the long lines. So I went out to check it out, and the lines that I'm seeing at some of the same locations that I went to visit back in October are much longer, and much longer than they were when I went, and they were pretty long when I went in October. So Daniel Goff is saying Georgia on my mind. Maybe one of these days, Daniel, I will sing Georgia on our minds for the program. But only if Miranda does it. Only Miranda. You got harmony, right?
I can sing. Right, mostly just a karaoke night, but I can sing.
All right, then. And when this pandemic is over and I get that vaccine, and I'll do it as soon as I can, y'all. Me and Miranda, we're going to go to karaoke, and we'll film it.
That would be a blast.
That would be a blast. And we got just 13 days before 2020 can finally die. So let's just hope that 2021 bears some more good news. This has been the AM Report for HAPS News. I'm Alex Mahajer. Thanks for joining this morning. We are live every weekday morning at 7:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Eastern, with all of your quick political news and headlines to get your day started right. Miranda, where can people find you and support you?
I'm on Twitter at Miranda Yaver. Please reach out. I'd love to hear from you.
Very good. Thanks for joining, Miranda. I'll see you soon.
Thanks so much for having me, Alex.
And if you like this journalism and you like this content, you can subscribe to it. Visit me at haps.tv/@Alex, where you can buy me a cup of coffee. You can subscribe to this content so you can get an alert. And if you're a new subscriber, you get 100 coins that you can just award to me. Just give them, click the award button. Let me know you're enjoying the program, and or just watch every morning. We'll be back Monday morning with all of your political news and headlines to get your day started right. Award Alex now, says Daniel Goff. Listen to Daniel Goff. Question from Cinderella C. Question: is Haps a leftist app? Apps are not left or right. They're just apps. So no, Haps is not a leftist app. I'm a leftist, but Haps is not. That's how that works. MSNBC is just a place. Things don't have human characteristics. You know, it really annoys me when people call the host of something as the platform like human characteristics. So no, Haps is not a leftist app, but I am. Answer your question? Cool. Good talk. Let's see. This is 2020. Who knew Barbara Walters could scare us with just 2 numbers? I'm not sure what you're referencing. Oh, haha, 2020. I can't do a, yes. Parler is, you're right. Parler is definitely more right. Okay, fine. It's but that was something that was set up for a certain political leaning to subscribe to and join. And I would say that that's sort of a first of its kind Parler. So exception to the rule. And yes, you're right. I'm wrong. You're right. I'm a leftist viewer, says Bronte. Very leftist. Very good. But, I welcome all viewers from all sides of the political spectrum. And there's not just 2. There's not just left and right. Okay. There's a very broad spectrum, and it's not left, right, and middle. There's a very broad spectrum of political ideology in the United States. And I think it's really, really high time that we stopped identifying everybody as the other. It's not just left or right, good versus bad, Democrat versus Republican, black versus white. It's not. We're much more multifaceted, multicolored, and multicolored country. So when people do that, when they call it the leftist or the right or the conservative versus Republican, what they're doing is they're making it us versus them. And if you're always seeking to destroy your enemy, then you're never making progress. So I welcome people from all political persuasions to come watch this program and bat around with me and get in arguments just like that every morning. And hopefully we can do that with you on Monday when we're back with an all new episode. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe, everybody. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.